We are now video recording. I'm not going to look at that because my lips are slightly off and it disturbs me. And I'm easily disturbed. So anyway, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Welcome to episode whatever we're on.
I don't know anymore.
Anyway,
Glad we had this talk.
we watched Girls.
Yeah.
Okay, so what has it been? Like 20 years?
It only took us a couple of decades. Come on. We're relevant.
So one of my sisters was over and she was doing her nails because I have a bunch of stuff to do, gel nails at home. And
You always do an amazing job.
thank you. Yes, we enjoy our nail time, and it's much cheaper than going to the salon.
Imagine.
Yeah. So we needed something that the three of us could enjoy, which is really you and her. You and her are very similar in a lot of ways, actually, but way more overlap in terms of TV enjoyment. I'm the problem in this family.
I've never thought that, but okay. Go on.
But she and I could agree on Girls, and you decided not to push the issue, essentially. So we started watching Girls, and it's one of those shows that I've read a ton about, but I think I've watched one or two episodes in the middle for some reason a million years ago, but I've definitely never watched the pilot. So we watched probably 4 episodes. The three of us probably watched 3, and then maybe we watched one by ourselves or something like that.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's about right. 3 or 4.
And it's so good. I'm like, okay, I see why this was such a phenomenon. It's really great. And it's really, I guess it's sad because when you watch something like that, which was very new at the time in terms of, I think just showing women as being as complicated and gross and anti-hero as men, you think it's oh, this is going to open door, this marks a sea change, but not really. I mean, to an extent, but it's still unusual, even 20 years later. There still aren't a lot of shows like Girls in that way, in my opinion. What do you think?
I think I'm about to have to get a spray bottle and go after a cat that's behind us. Yeah. We've been dealing with this for the last couple of, I guess, recordings. Although this is the first.
Gosh.
I love them, but they're fluffy little nightmares. So you're just asking my opinion of Girls?
No, do you think that we're at a place in television where women are portrayed as multifaceted, as complicated, as, sometimes off-puttingly as men are? Are women given that amount of complexity, that amount of thought, that amount of, because women have to be attractive and feminine to be worth consideration, because the people who make decisions about, what gets on the air are often heterosexual men, and they often don't have time for or interest in women they can't imagine wanting to have sex with.
I would say from a very limited experience that you definitely still have you don't have representations like you get in Girls on a widespread scale or a wide scale.
Can you think of another show? I mean, obviously there are other shows, and maybe it's just a failure of my imagination that they're not coming to mind. I mean, I would honestly say it's been more of a thing in movies. I'm thinking of Booksmart, that movie about those 2 girls trying to get an abortion for one of them. I forget what it was called. Bridesmaids. But as far as shows,
And I am probably the worst person to ask because I watch barely any.
Yeah, you don't watch TV.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of TV, and I try to watch things that are, female led, and like I'm thinking of like Ginny and Georgia, for example, which I really like enjoyed, but neither Ginny nor Georgia are like gross in any way, you know, like there's really nothing about them that would make them like off-putting to straight men. I mean, besides like one of them is a murderer, but you know, that aside, or like even like Grace and Frankie, which, you know, they're like older, but they're still like very sexy in my opinion. And still there are some like gross out gags, but it's different, I would say. Anyway, I guess my point is like, you hope these things are portents of things to come. And I think it helps to have any kind of representation, but it hasn't been the change I'd hoped. But anyway, it was really good. It's really funny to like, so I remember reading about how the woman who plays Marnie was like a terrible actress, and then like watching the show and be like, oh yeah, she's really bad. And
which one is Marnie?
The super hot one, not the one that travels around a lot, but the mom of the group.
Oh yeah, yeah. Although I feel like she plays the mom character really well.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, I could see how she would.
There was one scene in particular where she's like crying or something, and it's just like really, really bad. I think it's mostly like you don't notice it, or maybe she's fine most of the time, but sometimes you're just like, oh man. But you know, she's super hot and it's good enough for me. Yeah, and I don't know, it's funny because like Lena Dunham is definitely a complicated character as a human. I'm not gonna pretend to be up on like all the Lena Dunham gossip, but I think it's really interesting that in like season 1, I want to say episode 1, she's in the hotel room trying to order room service on her parents' account, and as she's leaving, she sees two envelopes, one for her, one for housekeeping, and she steals the housekeeper's money. What else do you need to know about the character or the writer? Like, and you know, she says like this is like somewhat autobiographical. She is a flawed person, and there's nothing okay about stealing a housekeeper's tip money, especially like as a spoiled rich white girl. But there's something about being self-aware, and that's where I think honestly Lena Dunham is probably like most egregious, is where she's not self-aware, but there's an aspect to being that kind of person that precludes self-awareness. And I think like that is such an interesting exploration of we're all aware of how we suck, or like a lot of ways we suck, but then as you get older, you become aware of ways in which you sucked when you were younger, which means you are aware that there are ways that you suck right now that you're not aware of, that you will only with any luck become aware of at a future date.
Oh yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Nightmare fuel.
Yeah, there was some specific drama that I remember around her, and specifically the show, but I can't remember it enough to competently recount it. I think it had to do with sexual, like,
I think she covered
assault
for
allegations.
Someone.
Yeah, there was a lot of weirdness, but I don't remember it enough to competently say it here. But yeah, there was some. I think as the show went on, it went through some darker times.
Yeah, and she like apparently like sent a dog or cat back to the shelter. I don't remember.
I think I remember something around that too. Like, and that's the thing also is like, I haven't, like, my research has been a couple of YouTube videos, and I don't know what the slant on those videos was. So like, I know there's some stuff, but I don't feel like I've gotten the full story, honestly.
But anyway, I'm really enjoying the show. I think it's really well done thus far, season 1. Looking forward to watching more. And what else? What else is happening? What else have we consumed? Oh, we watched. Do you have more on Girls? What do you think about Girls as a heterosexual man?
I've liked it. It's been really good. I've liked just the random, like not random. I really like the comedy. I can't entirely explain why, but I like it. It's really good.
I think it's like an interesting mix of like highbrow, lowbrow,
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
like really pretentious jokes, and then just really like toilet humor almost.
Yeah, and I think part of why I can't pull out specifics is because, like, I'm not used to taking break weekends, and this was definitely a crash break weekend for me. And so it's like I remember everything as like a very delightful fog, but I don't remember specifics from the show.
I'm curious about how you feel watching the show depict its male characters and the way that the female characters talk about the male characters.
I feel like there's definitely some accurate stereotypes that are being portrayed. I get to it. I can't relate to a lot of the male characters particularly, but I don't know. I can see. I mean, it seems like it's being written somewhat from experience, so it seems truthful to a degree. I don't think I feel a specific way about how they're portrayed.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I almost feel like it reverses how you usually see women portrayed, where the male characters are very comparatively, especially like one note, one dimensional kind of stereotypes of like the fuck boy, like the fuck boy or the I don't know, too nice guy.
Yeah, there's not very much complexity.
No.
There's not really, yeah. I guess that's why nothing really registered, is there's no complexity behind their characters for the most part. Which I don't think I'd noticed until you pointed it out. Oh, I'll be back. Yeah, you know you're doing something. I'm sure we'll get to do that a couple more times while we're filming this one.
Well, okay. So then the other thing, I quit smoking and now my throat is like, what the hell?
I think it's kitty allergies.
Probably allergic to these demons. We hate ourselves. It's cool. So the other thing I want to talk about is Strange New Worlds. Is that what it is?
Oh no.
Is that what we're watching?
I feel like I feel like an ambush is being set up.
No. I feel like Lucille Bluth's like evergreen tweet saying, "Go watch a Star War." Go watch a Star Trek. Yeah, so this is a contentious topic in our household because it was early in the relationship. I was trying to go along to get along.
I really do. Like, you never had to watch Picard. That was just like
I was giving it
going above and beyond.
I gave it like 5 episodes or maybe 3. I don't know. It felt like a million.
Far too many to knowing how you feel about it now.
It was so bad. Like, it was so bad. And I'm like, I don't know that it was bad. I knew nothing about the stars and the Treks, like nothing. I tried to watch the original series like a million years ago. I'm like, this is terrible. I hate it. I watched 1 or 2 of the movies, like the new movies, and I really liked them. I don't know. I've tried a little bit at various times. I've never gotten into it. So then I'm watching the series, and everything is a reference. Like every plot, every conversation references something I don't know.
Picard.
In Picard. Yeah, it's awful. And I'm just like, okay, none of this is good.
It's amazing if you're a Next Generation fan and if you had to suffer the first 2 seasons. But otherwise, yeah, I think I was just happy, honestly, that the third one wasn't terrible, because I think everyone expected the third one to just be god awful. And thankfully, the people that I guess would have normally directed it were busy doing other stuff, so they got Terry Matalas to come in. But yeah, no, I could see how that was, in retrospect, a poor choice for a first Star Trek. For sure.
It did like give me feels at times, so I appreciated that. But yeah, otherwise. So this one, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give you one more chance.
I appreciate it.
And it's way better. I mean, it's a prequel, so you know, much less. There's a little bit of but it's not. It's not season 1, episode 1. Are we watching, right?
I mean, we started with season 1, episode 1.
Oh, okay.
So technically, Pike came in. The first series, or the first new Trek series, was Star Trek Discovery, and he basically came in and was the captain for Discovery season 2. So they set up some, but like the only thing that you really had to know from that is technically they introduced him, Spock, and Number One.
So this is that was the prequel of the prequel.
Kinda, that was them testing, I guess, to see if like those characters warranted a spinoff. But from what I understand, they already knew that they were going to give those 3 characters a spinoff.
Okay.
But the only, like, you did not have to watch Discovery season 2 to really know what was going on. The only thing that really came out of that was Pike knowing things about his future that he doesn't really want to know.
Yeah. And
they could do a good job of recounting or capping that to a pretty good degree in episode 1.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm trying to think of any like thoughts I have on it. I don't know. Some of the sets are cool. Though like what a brilliant idea to have a show on a ship where it's like 2 rooms.
Oh yeah, no, that's what like it's there's a specific name for that kind of show. Like I forgot the term that I've heard used for that, but it's like, yeah, they have to write it in a certain way because really sometimes you go on away missions and you're like on planets and stuff, but yeah, very limited amount of locations. Like it takes place on a ship.
I think my biggest criticism is it's a little bit ham-fisted. Like when they're like, do you remember Earth? Do you remember the Civil Wars?
That's them trying to take Trek back to the utopian vision of like Roddenberry, I would argue. And to a degree, it's them, I think, course correcting because a lot of the new Trek stuff that they produced is dark, which honestly I've liked. Like Discovery season 1 was incredibly dark. I thought it was a nice change up.
What does it have to do with dark versus light, do you think?
A lot of fans get really, really angry when you create dark Star Trek stuff because then they're like, Gene Roddenberry wanted it to be a utopia. And like, I'm like, Gene Roddenberry's been gone for a while, guys. It can evolve. Cancel me. I don't care.
Okay. I guess I'm confused. To me, like, it's not a question of utopia versus dystopia or dark versus light. It's like subtle versus unsubtle. Right? Like my problem with it is not that it's too light or too utopian. It's that it's too unsubtle where it's like sometimes you'll have like an allegory, which is what they're doing, right? They're creating an allegory. And you just like, oh, I see the parallels. And then sometimes they'll say, this is an allegory for the United States of America and polarization and nuclear war and, you know.
I don't think they were necessarily trying to tie it to current stuff. They also got burned doing that, apparently, with season 1.
Wasn't there literally a Jan 6, like, noose?
Yeah, they did actually have Jan 6.
So how were they not tying it to current events?
I think they were basically just trying to explain, like, the Federation to a degree. I think they were trying to do a lot of things. It was the first episode of a reboot of a prequel to the original series that was supposed to return to Star Trek's original values and bottled episode format. And so I think to a degree it was just setting up what the Federation was, because I think also their goal for this show is to attract people back into Star Trek or make it people's first Trek. I don't know if they were trying to be necessarily ham-fisted.
No,
but I could definitely see how they set that up. how it would look like that.
Well, I don't actually. That's a good question. Like, I don't know. I guess I kind of feel like Star Trek is kind of unsubtle. You know, like I think it is kind of like we are trying. Like, I don't know. I saw some things on the internet about how people were mad that like Star Trek was woke or something, and people were like, "Yo, dog, like Star Trek has been unabashedly like woke from the beginning." I guess I don't know. There's something delightful about like things like Mad Men. I couldn't watch Mad Men because it was too subtle. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I can't follow the plot. What are you saying? You know? So there is something kind of nice about something that's like not subtle. That's just like really clear and black and white and in your face, and like right is right and wrong is wrong. So it's hard to know whether something is just like, again, like a lack of skill versus just like, no, this is where we're going with this. This is what this is.
No, I can see what you mean.
And I don't know because I've not watched it.
I would say that they definitely toned down on the like any association with today's politics. That I would say the first episode, which I don't remember season 1 incredibly clearly, but because it's been like over a year, and like I'm going back through it for the first time. Like I've rewatched a couple of the episodes, but not nearly to the extent that I did some of the other ones, just because I was, I guess, busier this time around. But yeah, I would say that they cut down on the parallels with like politics now, like after this episode.
Did they cut down on them, or did they just get more subtle?
I don't think they got more subtle. I think they just it disconnected from them for a bit, because they also got burned for doing that too much with season 1 of Discovery. Mm-hmm. It was very heavy-handed, and mm-hmm. I think it was just after the 2016 election. Yeah, Discovery season 1 had issues. It was dark. I liked it, but
and I have like my whole life is just about politics. Like, far be it from me to criticize anything for being too political. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying it takes me out of it a little bit when I recognize I'm being manipulated.
And there's one now. It actually is making me question one of the other episodes. Now that you're pointing that out, there is one where like they point like, so Pike, if you haven't already gathered, his approach is normally diplomacy. Mm-hmm. Well, there is an episode where they greatly call that into question as being a universally good thing.
Oh, well, thank you for bringing that up, because that was another part of episode 1 where I was just like, okay, that's a separate, me getting irritated that I'm aware I'm being manipulated is actually a separate thing. I think what takes me out of it is where I feel like I'm being preached at.
There's one where they go the opposite direction, if that's...
But in episode 1, that whole thing trying to save the less advanced civilization from going down the path of the United States of America, where he was like, we handle things through diplomacy or through negotiation, but at the end of the day, you have to carry the bigger stick. And I was like, yeah. Well, and it's one thing to be preached at if I understand the sermon, but I'm like, what is the takeaway here? Because if you're not willing to use the stick, then you might as well not have it. So at the end of the day, might makes right. Like, right? Like, what's the sermon? Like, what's the takeaway here? Are you just talking to talk?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I don't know. I never actually thought through that. I think he's just relating to her rhetoric to some degree, because at the end of the day, he's willing to let them blow themselves up. I think it's just he's trying to show them what can be, and basically having a ship or a starship that they would not have imagined possible flying above like their capital city is a good way of forcing them to suddenly, because at the end of the day, like he gives them this like, look, if you want to blow yourselves up, go ahead, but
you could have
you also have this option.
I see.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, he uses that, but I think it's just he's matching her rhetoric. But at the end of the day, he's like totally willing to let them do whatever they're gonna do. Like he's not forcing them. That was just kind of I think, a way of trying to illustrate the what could be versus the path that they're currently on, and also relating it to like Earth's past, which that is established canon in Star Trek. Is there's a World War III. Then towards the end of it, some dude makes a rocket and discovers warp, and then that, like, basically first contact is made with Earth, and then, yeah, the rest kind of comes together.
That's interesting, because I feel like that's actually a really important point, because, like, in a lot of ways, what wins isn't sticks. It's carrots in the sense of like a promise of a better life. Like one of the ways that, you know, the United States created a lot of defectors in the Soviet Union was by helping them get a hold of our, you know, movies and TV shows and music, right? And it proved to members, you know, people trapped in the Soviet Union, the stories you've been told about the U.S. are not entirely true, and that, you know, we have a lot of things that you might like, and there are viable alternatives to the life you're living and what you've been told. And so that vision of like a better life can be a more powerful motivator than being threatened with a big stick. And I mean, it's the same for like when you look at what works in CIA interrogations. The empirical evidence is really strong that torture doesn't work, and that, you know, making friends with people and making offers to them and befriending them and earning their trust, like, works way better than torture to get good information out of people. But, you know, it's not Hollywood often. It's not cinematic. It's not satisfying in the way that torturing the bad guys is. So that's cool.
Yeah, like, and I can kind of relate to it. Back from my, not really involved at all in the church these days, but there was one of the most interesting books I read when I was Myth of a Christian Nation. The whole thing was like, it basically set up power under and power versus power over. Power under being like inspire people to like come to your side by showing them like love and actually preaching Jesus' message, versus what a lot of the church does, which is try to shove hatred down everyone's throat and get political power and force everyone to do what you believe. And one of them actually, you know, brings or inspires people to join the church. One does not.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, my mom told me she grew up Catholic, but ended up converting, you know, wasn't really practicing, and then ended up converting to Christianity in her, I want to say, college years, when she met a group of students who were just really nice and really happy and made her feel included. And she looked at them and said, I want what you have. And they took her to church, and she became a Southern Baptist. And now there's nothing worse than a convert. She's very passionate about her faith. But yeah, I think demonstrating, pulling people in is really powerful, and is often more powerful, ironically, than, you know, force and coercion, and trying to get people to do whatever you want them to do, whether it's convert or not blow each other up or not support the Soviet Union or give away information.
Yeah. It's kind of a universal concept.
But it's so contra to our instincts. We have such strong retribution instincts, punishment instincts. Like, we just want to force and coerce and punish and, threaten. And just one of those areas where we are really well served by overcoming some of those first instincts and looking at like what really works over the long term. And even if it were less effective, let's say it were 10% less effective, considering it's 90% more pleasant,
Yeah.
I mean, it does happen to work better, but even if it didn't, and we should probably consider it just because it makes such a better life. And I mean, and again, going back to like, when it comes to fat shaming, for example, like fat shaming not only doesn't work, but studies show it makes people fatter. The more fat
I
stigma
totally see that.
people experience, the more the overweight they tend to become.
It's like a lot of people stress eat, so stress them out some more. That'll totally fix the problem.
Totally.
I mean, I used to stress eat all the freaking time.
Totally. Well, and it's not even just like they're choosing to stress eat. Like stress can actually create more hunger hormones. So they can actually feel hungrier as a result of stress. Stress might, decrease your metabolism. Like, I don't know. It probably depends on the person, but it helps to walk outside if you want to lose weight. Well, if you are getting yelled at by drivers, which actually happens to fat people, drivers will yell out their windows at them. You don't want to walk, it's just like,
Yeah, why would you?
right. And then, when it comes to like helping people to delay their sexual debut, for example, like students actually have sex later when they are exposed to medically accurate comprehensive sex ed versus abstinence
funny how
only
that
programs.
works.
Yeah. So the more you shame and stigmatize sex, the earlier kids have sex on average. There's more sexual assault in sexually repressive societies than in sexually open societies. So yeah, I mean, it's just again and again, like kindness and cooperation and friendship and drawing in just works so much better than punishment and exclusion and shame and stigma and fear.
Yeah, it's amazing how we know, like, being in an area that still has pretty much the only sexual or sex ed we have is abstinence only. And it's just amazing how that's a lesson that I don't know if we'll ever learn locally.
When it's like you could look at us and be like, oh, they're coastal elites, just living in La La Land, which, we live in Alabama, not La La Land. This is not coastal. And we are far from elite. But there was a time.
I mean, thanks. You've actually been coastal. No, I've lived in Alabama and Tennessee my entire life.
I've been coastal, and I, in some ways could have been considered elite in certain ways, but not anymore. But like the evidence is there. Like we're not just like, oh, this sounds good. Like no, when researchers have looked at these questions, they have found very strong evidence that these things work better for whatever you'd want to accomplish. So any hoodle, we got pretty far off field, but I don't know. I do feel like Star Trek, from what I understand of it, is kind of an inherently political show. I mean, it is, about societies, right?
Yeah. And it's definitely a political show. I think they were very heavy-handed in Discovery, so I think they backed off a bit. I feel like Strange New Worlds is where they found a really good balance between things. That and just also like they're returning more to like the bottle format. So like they have stories that they still have some serialized arcs throughout the seasons, but like Discovery was basically one long serialized arc, whereas this like Strange New Worlds kind of goes more to the episodic format.
Where's the sex? Is there any sex in it?
I'm trying to think. No, there's a little later on. It's not heavy on it.
Okay, well, that's a note. I want more.
Oh, you like. What if you like Section 31 spinoff when it comes out? Michelle Yeoh's character. You like her?
Cool. All right. Okay. I feel like that's probably a lot.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, this is fun. I like
Girls in Star Trek.
I don't know. I feel like we're just using TV as an excuse to just talk about things we want to talk about, which seems fun to me.
I like that. I kind of like how we're evolving towards that. It's nice.
We're just ranting loosely based on what we're watching.
Yeah, it's nice. I like ranting. I can rant all day long. TV, a lot of times I don't have much to say because I generally have not consumed a lot of it. But yeah, ranting on the other hand.
I mean, he does live with me, so he consumes a lot of ranting.
I mean, I rant a lot too, but anyway.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Bye, guys.